morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today? I thought it was going to be warmer today, so I was expecting the place to be packed. Must be a combination between the threat of a voters' meeting and a football game day going on, huh? Is that what's going on? Must be. Well, that just means we get to make all the choices and decisions at the voters' meeting, huh? All right, good. All right. Let's go ahead. We're going to start with prayer, and then we're going to get into our discussion a little bit. The discussion sheet that you should have says Session 7, Chapter 2, verses 12 to 16. The law is written on their hearts. So the heart of, no pun intended, but the heart of this text is one that answers a serious question that I think all of us wrestle with and struggle with and have asked at one point in time, is what happens to those individuals who have never heard the gospel and die? What happens to them at the end, at the last day? So Paul ventures into the woods with that question here and gives us some groundwork to make some observations. So let's go ahead and open up with prayer, and then we'll jump into the text. So, Lord, we thank you for today, for bringing us into this day, into this moment, into this time, into this hour, where we can see your glory, seen through your word, demonstrated by your Son. And we ask that as you continue to move and lead us through this text, you continue to manifest your glory in giving us the faith to hold on to your promises and your truth without error. And we ask this, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at the text. Let's see, is somebody feel motivated or inspired, moved by the Spirit this morning for us to read verses 12 through 16? So I want to talk a little bit more about the word law. Now, we talked about this last time under question 1. It says, what is the law that he's referring to? Well, he's writing, and I was saying this before, about the Pentateuch, or the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. Moses has revealed law for God, and a lot of that's summarized in the 10 Commandments, but it's not solely contained there. So just to ask the question, when do you suppose the law of God began? When was the law of God when did it begin? When was the first time? Okay, so that command, right? You shall not eat. Any other guesses? Okay. It was written on their heart. So this idea of maybe the will of God written on their heart. Okay, any other? Okay, so you think that sin brought law into the... See, okay. Any other guesses? All right. The first time law ever was echoed in the cosmos was when God said, "Let there be." Because whenever you have the will of God manifesting itself, that is the law. So a lot of times when we think of the law, we think of thou shalt nots or the commands. This is what you should do or what you should not do. All the law is a revelation of what God's will is for creation. So when we start out in the Bible and we hear God say, "Let there be light," and there was light, you have God commanding law, his will on the abyss, on the void, and having it react, having creation take place. And so there is the very first time we see law manifest itself. And so this is the will of God. And this is the other thing that Paul's going to be talking about when he starts talking about the law, is even drawing us back to Abraham, because the law existed with Abraham and Abraham was before the commandments, right? And Abraham, he was counted righteous because his faith gave way to action. And so you have Abraham being able to perform the law by faith alone, even before the Ten Commandments. So this whole exercise, as we get to this, is getting us to try to take a broader viewpoint of what the law is. Because a lot of times we'll say, well, what about those people that were never told the Ten Commandments? Well, the law of God is not just contained in the Ten Commandments. It's great that it was manifested to us and it was made known to Israel there on Mount Sinai. We love it and we cherish it because it's God's will for our life and how we relate to Him, how we relate to one another. But it doesn't have its beginning in the Ten Commandments. It has its beginning in God's relationship to creation from the very onset of it, with the let there be. Even with the let there be man, all of it is the framework of God's law and His will. When we look at Genesis 1 and 2, we see the law being fulfilled perfectly because God's will is perfectly manifested in that Genesis 1 and 2. Yes, Dwight? Well, you have let there be man, right? That they'll be His image, right? And that's the thing about it, is that God's law is not just necessarily between man and God. God's law affects all of creation. This is why in Romans 8, we'll get there eventually, when Paul says all of creation is groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up into this present age. We're all of creation is yearning for God's order to be restored in its perfection. I always like the story of Jesus walking out of the temple and going past the fig tree. Now, there's a whole lot packed up into this story, right? When Jesus goes up to the fig tree when it's out of season, what does He do to it? He kills it. Yeah, He kills it. And then He walks off. And His disciples, and I'm paraphrasing or whatever, they say, well, what was that all about? And what does He say? He said, if that fig tree would have known who was asking fruit from it, it would have bore fruit. Okay. And then you think about, wow, is that really what it would be like in the fully manifested nature of God's law and will in Genesis 1 and 2? Adam and Eve could have walked up to, an apple tree, who knows, a pomegranate, whatever, and just ask for it regardless of the time, the season, or the day, and it just produced the most perfect fruit for you because you're the representation of God's will and His image in the world. And so it's just kind of neat when you start thinking about God's law, right? and how His law is contained and obeyed and how it affects all of creation. But yes, you're right. Now, God's law is specific. When we're talking about Sinai, we're specific with Israel. This is how you will be my people, and I am your God, right? I, the Lord your God, who brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, am your God. That's how the Ten Commandments begin in Exodus 20. He begins the story of the Ten Commandments on Sinai with the gospel. This is why you are to do these Ten Commandments, because I loved you and had compassion on you and made you my people, and I honored the promise that I gave your forefathers. See, that's the thing, is that God was faithful to His own law well before the Ten Commandments came, because He promised and decreed that His will was to be a blessing, to use Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to be a blessing to all nations. He remained faithful to that covenantal promise. So the law is not just contained there in the Ten Commandments. It is a lot more all-encompassing to that. And really, anytime we're talking about the law, we're talking about God's desired will demonstrated between Him and His creation, whether that's the creation of the cosmos, right, the firmament of the earth, or whatever you want to say, or His creation between us. And so that's why when we're talking about Paul here, when he's talking about without the law or with the law, they have the law written on their hearts, because you can look at the history of society and that without the written law of the Ten Commandments, what does society generally do? follows the Ten Commandments, right? You can talk about, regardless of what God they worship, but they're called to solidarity to it. But then you have, regardless of where you find yourself on the landscape of history or on the landscape of the known world, you have honoring your authorities, right? You have not murdering. You have not committing adultery. You have all these laws that are woven into the fabric of society, regardless of whether they're Judeo-Christian, right? Because they're woven into the heart of all mankind. It doesn't matter where you find yourself. It's not okay to steal somebody else's stuff. We're getting to a dangerous topic or a dangerous point, but this is the basis of civilization is God's law. Wherever God's law is upended and forsaken, and you can see how that is constantly always under attack. What do you mean I can't steal? Right? Or what does it mean to steal? What does it mean to do X, Y, and Z? That's usually where the fighting is. Not whether or not it's right or wrong to steal, it's just the why. Right? When is it permissible to have adultery? Right? When is it permissible to steal? When is it permissible to fight against your authorities? Our human nature is always looking for loopholes in God's law, regardless of whether we have the Ten Commandments or it's written on our heart. Yeah, Dwight? Okay, all right. Whatever that is, and we can label it a variety of different things, and that's what I'm getting at, is this natural law, the will of God. Right, when Paul's talking about when he is talking specifically about the law here in this text, he is talking about the Jews that have received and the Gentiles who this law has been made manifest to them. But he's also talking about how those who do not have the law are a law among themselves, and what that law is. I'm just trying to decipher some of this like legalese that he's trying to throw around in this text. The law that they are a law of themselves is the law that's written on their hearts. So if you want to do like law as in lowercase, that's the law that those people who do not have the law, uppercase, the Mosaic law, the Ten Commandments, will be judged against. Does that make sense? Everybody, is everybody lost? Everybody's lost. Okay. So you have law, which is on our hearts. I'm going to put natural. Right? And then you have capital law, which is the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments. So he's saying, he's using the same word, right? Those who do not have the law have a law unto themselves. And it's this law that they will be judged by. But those who have this will be judged by this. Because even if you don't have this, you still have this. And you will still be judged according to this. And they're basically the same. Exactly. Remember we talked about this last time about conscience? Because this is where Paul starts hitting us with, you have a couple different things in Paul's text. You have a brain, you have a heart, and you have a conscience. And the conscience is bearing witness against you. And this is what he's saying. He's saying the way that you know that you have this on your heart, I don't know if I spelled that right, but whatever, is the fact that you have a conscience. What does your conscience do to you? See, I like how for me, my conscience always tells me what I did wrong. And whenever I ask that question, what does your conscience do for you? Oh, it gives you direction. Not mine. Mine just is like a signal flare. Whoop, that was a mistake, right? My conscience is always telling me when I do something wrong. I wish it would jump the gun a little bit and be more convincing. But the thing is what the conscience does is, and bears witness against us. Because we can see that there's individuals. This is why, and I remember I talked about this last time. I used different news stories, or was this the Wednesday class? I don't remember. I get you. See, the problem that I did is at the beginning of all this, I made Galatians the Wednesday service and Romans this this Bible study, and they complement each other so much that in my mind they're the same. So I apologize for that. But the idea is about this idea of your conscience, is that this is why we can read news stories, and regardless of whether the person's a Christian or not, we can look at that and say, that is so unconscionable. Because we still hold individuals to that standard. You look at people in the courtroom, and there's nothing affecting their response to the things that are being levied against them or being sentenced, and people are look at their face. They have zero remorse. What does the world want? The world wants a conscience to bear witness against this person, to bring some sort of resolve or to bring some sort of reaction. So even the world and when we're looking at newscasts and stuff, they are showing the evidence of these things. Now, this is where a lot of philosophers make the distinction between humanity and animals. Is this concept of a conscience and the concept of a mind. Not a brain, but a mind. That's a whole different topic, but it's one that you guys can think about when you can't sleep, right? Yeah. Well, he also had what was given to see, the thing about God is that he doesn't want mindless servants. He wants love. That's his central attribute. Now, we can talk about what that looks like in different ways, and if you want love, do you want to force people to love you? Is that real love? No. And so when he creates people or things perfectly, he gives them the capacity to demonstrate these things perfectly. And yes, right? And to freely love him. And that's what real love is. And instead of freely loving God's creation and God himself, Lucifer fell in love with himself. And that's where he was the most beautiful of angels, right? And he wanted to, and he was, an archangel, high in command. And instead of wanting to serve mankind, because of his beauty and his power, he felt like he should be served by mankind. And that's why he sought to destroy it. He became overcome. So your question is, well, how could God create something perfect and then have it be broken right away? Well, we don't know if it, anyways, that's just a different topic. But the concept is that did the angels have the capacity to love? And that's what makes them perfect. Because they could love him, and they had the ability to do that as well, just as Adam and Eve had the ability and the capacity. And even though Lucifer had the ability and the capacity, he chose not to exercise either. Does that make sense? No? Well, you think about this. If God created Adam and Eve or Lucifer in any other way, instead of giving them the capacity and the ability and then holding them accountable to those things, instead of doing that, he made it so that they could do nothing but that. Then is that really love that God demands? What is it that he demands? If he creates a society or a creation that all it does by its nature is serve him and obey him regardless, without any will at all, what is he? He's a tyrant. That's exactly right. He is a tyrant. And so, but that's not the kind of God we have. That's the kind of God that Islam has, right? That he is a God that must be served at all costs, that we must climb the ladder to reach him. That's the gods of Hinduism and Buddhism. That's the God of Judaism as well, right? When you start talking about how you honor God by your works and your law. But God doesn't, he does not set you up for failure, right? Because, anyways, we can talk about other religions at a different time. What he has done is made a perfect creation with the perfect capacity and ability to love.
So man fell because of an outside.
Culpability is a big thing. My son was talking about, my little one, 4 years. You stand up there and people talk to you? Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah, anyway. See, it worked. You were talking about outside influences. You'll have to ask God when we're sitting at the banks of the river of life, right? And see, now that's a good question. And that paints a picture for us of the new Eschaton, right? The new heavens and earth. So when you get to Revelation 20 and following, and you have the new Jerusalem, you have the kingdom of God dwelling with the new heavens and the new earth combined. We're given new bodies. Those who are raised to everlasting condemnation are swept away into the lake of fire to join them and be the chief prisoner, and in solitary confinement is Satan and his demons. And then you have now the gates of heaven being, the new Jerusalem being swung wide open, and the people of God dwelling in the midst of the city. There is a tree, but there is also something missing. What's missing in the new Jerusalem that was in Genesis 2? What's missing in the new Jerusalem that was, okay, so what was in Eden that will not be in the new Jerusalem? Yeah, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So the tree of life is the one that is in the midst of the new Jerusalem, right? And that's where the river comes from and makes glad and all that other good stuff. And so with the absence of Satan and without the absence of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, is it possible for mankind to fall from grace? Well, that's a really good theological/philosophical question, because God still still designs his perfect creation, even in perfection, to love him. And that means having the capacity and the ability to, and the desire. And so there's all sorts of unanswered questions that we have, that one day they will all be made known. But yeah, we don't know about whether or not Adam and Eve will. That's why people will say, well, maybe this isn't just God's first time around. Maybe this is like, round number 94, we're just now living, that's why you have all these people with these imaginary movies and all this other stuff. This isn't our first, anyways. But that's good to think about. Yeah. Lawlessness, yes, and that's why when you talk about the lawless, especially in the book of Revelations and throughout the Bible, where it talks about the lawlessness that was in the hearts of the people, the sons of disobedience. You're like, well, what are you talking about? The Ten Commandments weren't there yet. This was, right? This was. And that, there's some more interesting conversations to have about that. Okay, so let's go back to our worksheet. I know I just kind of circled back to question 1, but let's go to question 3, because we did question 2 last time. Question 3, it says, at verse 13, Paul indicates that hearing the law is not good enough, but in fact the hearers must do/obey, respond to the law. Is this new? So remember how we talked about a lot of times Lutherans will get attacked by saying, oh, you guys say you're justified by grace through faith alone, so you think that you can live any way you want to, and you don't have to do anything because you have faith. And a lot of times people will quote the James text to us that faith without works is dead, right? And in reality, to be a biblical Christian, not just dividing lines on denomination, faith springs to life the works of the law. That's what it does. It restores to us the ability and the capacity to honor God, not ourselves, but to honor Him, right? And this is not something that's new. It's not something new with the New Testament. It's something that has been woven through God's creation. The point of God giving us faith is so that we can use it. I love this in our epistle text for the service today, upstairs from 1 Corinthians 12, Paul will actually say this that all these spiritual gifts that we've been given as a church, believe it or not, were given to us for a reason, and that reason is the upbuilding of the community and of the body. And I think we lose sight of that from time to time. Not just, we can, for the first point, talk about giving the gifts of faith, that gift, that fruit of faith, and then being able to use that faith, but also that applies to all the gifts of the Spirit that God's given us. God didn't just give you the gifts that you've been given because He, was peppering people with gifts, and you just happened to be in the right place at the right time when you were being conceived or what have you. Or it's just chance or coincidence that you have been born in this time and in this place with the unique gifts that you have. No, God has given those gifts to you for a reason, and the joy of our life is being able to explore through our situations why that is. Be able to see, and I think that's one of the great things when you look back on your life. I don't know about you guys, but when you look back on your life and you see how God's been using you or using other people in your life at just the right time, it's not a coincidence. He did that on purpose. And He had that in His mind before the foundations of the world. But anyways, let's go back to the worksheet. So let's see. Could someone please read for me Deuteronomy 6 and then Deuteronomy 30, and then we'll be in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 7, and then James 1, that fateful text. So, okay. All right, so the Lord, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. That's called the Shema. I talked about that a little bit. But you have this law that comes out. Love the Lord your God with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your might, and love your neighbor as yourself. So again, God, as He calls people into relationship with Him, He expects something. He expects that faith to do something. And that faith is to love Him and to love others, right? That's what that does. So how about Deuteronomy 30? That God's given you His word, and He has put it on your heart. And Paul's going to talk about this when he talks about faith. In Romans 10, he'll talk about how does someone believe? Because they hear. Faith comes from hearing. And so here in Deuteronomy, we have this text that tells us that God has placed His word, our faith in our heart. He has put Himself in our heart so that we can do the things that He asks us to do. Okay, how about Matthew 7, Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount. Okay. So what's the point of that text? There's to sing the hymn? Yeah. Yeah, but what should we do? Build a house, right? To whoever hears these words of mine and does them. It's not just that we have faith so that we can go to be with heaven or go be with Christ in heaven. I think I railed on this a little bit before too, is that we relegate the gospel and the relationship that we have with Jesus as if it is a one-way ticket to heaven, and we're just waiting to get it punched, right? Why do I believe? Oh, so I can go to heaven. No. You believe so that you can continue to have your life conform to the will of God. You can live out your life in faith, that you can see God reigning in your life, that the kingdom reigns now in your life. We have a relationship with him now. It's not, and heaven isn't the goal anyways. The goal is to be with Christ in his new kingdom, new heavens and new earth, and do what? Serve him continuously, day and night. How many of you, when you think of heaven, think about doing the law for eternity? That's what you're going to do, right? When you guys think of heaven, what has the world painted a picture for you? Bouncing on clouds, right?
Well, I thought I was going to be singing.
You thought maybe that's service. See, and that's the other thing, is that we think about what is serving God night and day look like. You know, am I going to be digging trenches, right? Singing, worshiping God is an act of the law. Love the Lord your God with your whole heart, soul, and mind. Make a joyful noise to the Lord. That's doing what Christians do. Praying. We are commanded to pray. It's a law. Pray without ceasing. That's a commandment, right? That's a command. It's an imperative. Do this. All those things are what we do and what we'll be doing around the throne of God for all time. But it's funny how the world tries to paint a picture for us of what heaven looks like, right? We'll be dancing on clouds. Maybe we'll get wings. We'll help God dump out the rain. All sorts. We'll give little harps. We'll have good, family reunions, and everybody will be laughing. Some people's vision of heaven is closing their eyes and waking up on a nice white sandy beach with a Mai Tai in their hand and having it never run dry, It's that my cup runneth over, right? But that's not what it means, right? But that's not what heaven is. And what heaven is being able to perfectly keep the law in God's good creation for all time, serving him with our whole heart, soul, and mind. And so this is one of the things I think that as the Christian church, we start to see over time and over the generations, we've started to see God's law as being a negative thing. Oh, I don't want to hear the law. It makes me feel bad. I don't want to hear the law. It tells me I have to do certain things that I don't want to do. I don't want to hear the law. Well, what the law is the greatest gift to mankind. This is what God says. This is what my heart wants for you. It's like a parent telling a child, I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy. I want you to be healthy. I want you to live a long time. I want you to be safe. That's what the law is. The law isn't a tyrant telling you do this or else. We know that we'll be able to physically recognize each other. We know that what are you talking about? You talking about heaven, or are you talking about the new heavens and earth, the resurrection? Okay, so and the question is you will have some sort of, even though your body returns to the ground from which it was formed, and your spirit returns to God for who created it. And while you're there in God's near presence, the bosom of Christ, you are able to recognize the other created people that are there. Right, there will be some sort of manifestation of us to be able to recognize the people that are there. Good examples of that is Transfiguration, right? When Jesus is transfigured there, you have Moses and Elijah standing beside him, and the disciples were able to recognize them. There was distinguishing features of these individuals that made it so they could see them and understand them. The other thing is that's heaven. Now, if we're talking about the resurrection of all flesh, that gives us the picture of Jesus. So his disciples were able to recognize him. More than that, he still had the marks of his sacrifice on his body. His side and his hands were still pierced. And so in the resurrection with our new bodies, we will still be able to recognize each other, and there'll be a very physical, tangible reality. Right? But when we're talking about what does heaven look like, I always try to tell people, and this is something that was told me a long time ago that I hold on to, is heaven is better understood by us saying what it is not than by us trying to make a list of what it is. So being able to say what is not there is a lot easier than trying to paint a picture of what is. Because the thing is that we haven't experienced anything like that before. Everything that we frame reality around is our own experiences. That's what we think reality is, and it's such a limited little microscopic taste of what reality is and could be. It's limited by so many things. That's the thing about 18th and 17th century philosophers. They thought that all of reality could be captured by experience and by the human brain, and that the things that were real were only the things that were experienced by mankind. That's why you have those silly things about how if a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, no one's around to see it, did it really fall? Yes, it did, right? But see, you have these empirical philosophers that thought that all reality must be experienced, and everything around us is just a projection of what lies inside of us, even our projection of who God is. That's for a different conversation. But the reality of it is that when we look at heaven, it's beyond our imagination, because our imagination is bound to such finite experiences. I mean, that's why I love the Amazing Grace. I'll get to you a second, Dwight. I know you keep raising. You get to Amazing Grace, it's the third or the fourth verse where it says that, well, this is talking about the resurrection of all flesh, right? Not heaven. But when he says that once we get there, and we've been there 10,000 years, we'll have just as much time as when it first began. Just trying to wrap our mind around the unimaginable. Being in a situation where you can be somewhere for 10,000 years and have nothing change. How many things changed in your guys' lifetime? How many things have changed in the last 3 years in your lifetime? 10,000 years and nothing's changed. Dwight, finish us up.
Glad you mentioned.
And you know what? Just to end on this, how many of you enjoy the work you've been given? Now, I'm thinking about in your lifetime. Have you ever enjoyed the work you had to do? Yeah. That's because God created you to work. How many of you, now you don't have to raise your hand, but I know that there's some people that fear retirement, and then when retirement comes around, they find themselves there on that first couple days after being retired, and they're wondering, what am I going to do? And then they struggle with loneliness and depression and insecurity and all sorts of different things because they feel like they have lost purpose in their life. Do you want to know why that is? Because God designed you to work.
But he didn't really, did he? I mean, before the fall,
Yeah, we were working. We were bearing his image in the world. We were tending his garden and caring for it. We were raising they were called to be parents. First job that they were given was to be parents. That's a pretty hefty job. Is being a parent work? That's one of those things where, did you enjoy your work as a parent? Most of the time, right? But see, that's the thing, and we have to challenge our concept of what work is. Right? Is it painful labor? Is it servitude? I mean, is it all these negative connotations we think about going to work, this idea, or understanding what it comes. How many of you work your garden in the springtime and enjoy it? Exactly, right? It's great. It's fun. Some people, and it's because you have meaning and purpose and fulfillment in it. And it's because God created us to do things. We are part of this creation. And that's why we can get into conversations about stewardship and how stewardship is work and using the gifts God's given us and using them with joy. Just because you enjoy it doesn't mean it's not work, everybody. That's the best kind of work, right? You don't have to hate it in order for it to be counted as work. Why don't we finish? Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for today, and we thank you for your law that continues to move to us, lead and guide us. And we ask that you open up opportunities this week for us to practice it, to be able to love you with our whole heart, mind, and soul, and to love our neighbor as ourselves, to move to them and to show them the true identity of who you are as you have purchased and won them through your Son. And Lord, it's in his name that we pray. Amen.